A court in Taiwan has fined the local unit of Japan's Tokyo Electron 5 Minas and sentenced 5 defendants to jail terms of up to 10 years in a high-profile trade secrets case involving chipmaker TSMC. The ruling follows one of Taiwan's most prominent cases related to the island's core technologies, involving the alleged theft of TSMC's sensitive computer chip technology and charges under the National Security Act.
The federal government has approved price fixation for 35 essential and life-saving medicines, with another 45 molecules expected to be cleared soon, in a move aimed at addressing shortages that had affected patient treatment across Pakistan. A senior official said the decision is expected to improve the availability of critical therapies that had remained inaccessible due to delays in pricing approvals. The shortages had forced many patients to either miss treatment or rely on expensive, unregulated alternatives.
And as inflation climbs into double digits, most Pakistanis are living day to day struggling to make ends meet. With the national budget under preparation, it is a busy period for corporates and who rely on networks for insights into likely measures while using formal and informal channels to engage policymakers and present their wish lists. Ordinary Pakistanis, and largely disengaged from the technicalities of budget making and wary of number juggling, judge national budgets by their impact on their pockets. A politically opinionated public remains sceptical and expecting little relief from a government preoccupied with geopolitics currently. And in the year leading up to its dramatic seizure by US forces in the Indian Ocean, the oil tanker known as the MT Tiffany made several trips between Iran and a stretch of water off the coast of Malaysia, around 60 miles from the glitzy skyscrapers of Singapore. During these trips, it often loitered in a small area before dropping at anchor and switching off its mandatory automatic identification system, AIS, according to marine traffic data reviewed by CNN.
Sydney, Australia. Until recently, Roscoe Jewell sold about one used electric vehicle every 2 months on his online marketplace, Amazing EV. But in the weeks since the United States and Israel launched their war on Iran, Jewell has been shifting a second-hand EV roughly every 2 weeks. Dera Ismail Khan. A fire broke out in a cargo truck at Mara in Dera Ismail Khan district on the Indus Highway, prompting authorities to shut the road and causing long queues of vehicles on both sides. According to rescue sources, the incident occurred near Dorasolan Ada in the district's Paroa Tehsil, where a trailer loaded with cloth suddenly caught fire and the blaze intensified within moments.
Financial security in Pakistan is no longer determined by how much you earn, but by how well you can absorb shocks. Pakistan's weekly sensitive price index, CPI, inflation was recorded at 9.12 PC in the most recent reported week. For an ordinary consumer, this is a significant number. To put it into perspective, with a monthly salary of 100,000, an average household spends about 60% of its income on essentials like food, utilities, and transport. So items that originally cost $60,000 will now cost an individual more than $65,000. Most of all, this drains their disposable income, including savings and contributions made to any emergency funds.
And Pakistan approaches its next federal budget not with optimism, but under the weight of numbers that have grown more unforgiving since the original assessment. Between July 2025 and February 2026 alone, the federal government's debt rose by a staggering Rs 1.99 trillion to 79.9 TR, including external debt equivalent of 23.2 TR, according to the State Bank of Pakistan.
The word special does not begin to do it justice, said Donald Trump of the relationship between the United States and Britain. We're like two notes in one chord or two verses of the same poem, each beautiful on its own. That was in September when the US president spoke at a banquet hosted by King Charles III to mark his unprecedented second state visit to Britain. Since then, Trump's comments about Britain have not been so lyrical or so kind.
Rawalpindi, Punjab Minister for Youth Affairs and Sports Faisal Ayub Kokar on Sunday asked for the installation of a solar energy system at the Liaquat Bag Sports Complex and for improvements to the condition of the food street on Double Road. He visited the Liaquat Bag Sports Complex and reviewed the ongoing development work under the scheme Rehabilitation of Liaquat Bag Sports Complex.
Restrictions still in place around Nur Khan Air Base. Localities still closed are likely to reopen today, along with Pewadai and Faizabad bus stands, says official Rawalpindi. After a week of closure, many areas in Rawalpindi and Islamabad have reopened, bringing a sense of relief to the residents. However, residential and commercial areas around Nur Khan Air Base still remain closed. Negotiations to hammer out the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement took nearly 2 years before a breakthrough was achieved. Therefore, expecting Iran and the US to reach a deal that can end the war launched by America and Israel, while covering complicated issues such as reparations and freedom of navigation in the Gulf within days is unrealistic, while the global economy is reeling from the war, particularly the Iranian and American blockades of the Strait of Hormuz, and people around the world desire a swift resolution. These matters take time. That is why it would be wrong to label Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi's visit to Islamabad on Saturday a failure. Although US President Donald Trump refused to send his emissaries after Mr. Araghchi left Pakistan for Muscat, the game is far from over and hectic efforts to salvage the diplomatic process continue.
Oil prices have climbed higher amid stalled peace talks between the United States and Iran. Brent crude rose more than 2% on Sunday after hopes for a second round of ceasefire negotiations between Washington and Tehran unraveled over the weekend.
Truecaller is one of the world's most widely used caller identification platforms, with more than 500 million users. Now it's entering a more challenging phase as growth slows in its largest market and competition intensifies across telecom networks and smartphone platforms. Much of Truecaller's growth has been driven by India, which accounts for over 350 million users, or about 70% of its global base. The volume of spam and unwanted calls has turned the app from a simple caller ID service into a more embedded layer of everyday communication. Islamabad. PTI Kisan Wing Central Information Secretary Khalid Nawaz Sadraich said on Sunday that the absence of officially designated private companies for wheat procurement in major wheat-producing hubs of small-scale farmers has triggered a wave of panic, leaving growers vulnerable to middlemen purchasing harvests at throwaway prices. In a statement, Sadraich said that based on field reports gathered from different parts of Punjab, the provincial government's designated private companies have marginalised small-scale farmers in the wheat procurement process, registering only 65,000 out of more than 4 million farmers, despite 2 weeks of the purchasing drive.
Lahore. 5 incarcerated PTI leaders at Kot Lakhpat jail have called upon the federal government to stop passing the buck and focus on real issues being faced by the power division, adding that false narratives could never address real challenges. In a statement issued through their counsel Rana Mudassar Umer, jailed leaders Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Dr. Yasmin Rashid Ejaz Chaudhry, Omar Sarfraz Chima and Mian Mahmoudur Rashid bemoaned that the country's power division, with an installed generation capacity of 46,000 ambibu, was not able to manage the current peak demand of 19,000 ambibu.
And Karachi. The federal government has approved the long-awaited price fixation of 35 new essential and life-saving medicines, with another 45 molecules expected to be cleared shortly, and in a move aimed at ending critical shortages that had disrupted treatment for patients across Pakistan, a senior official and industry sources said on Sunday. And The officials said the decision would improve the availability of several high-priority therapies that had remained inaccessible due to prolonged delays in price fixation and forcing patients to either go without treatment or depend on costly and often unregulated smuggled medicines.
Amazon's podcasting business has transformed over the past 6 months. According to the New York Times back in August 2025, the company reportedly eliminated more than 100 jobs from its podcast studio, Wondery. At the time, Amazon insisted it was not shutting Wondery down, and that appears to be technically true. It still uses the Wondery brand.
And Theo Baker is graduating from Stanford this spring with something most seniors don't have, a book deal, a George Polk Award that he received for his investigative reporting as a student journalist, and a front row account of one of the most romanticized institutions in the world, his forthcoming How to Rule the World. An Education in Power at Stanford University was excerpted Friday in The Atlantic, and based on that alone, and I can't wait to see the rest. The only question worth asking is the same one Baker himself might be too close to answer, which is, can a book like this actually change anything? Or does the spotlight, as it always seems to, and send more students racing to the place?
Two of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's biggest political rivals say they are joining forces in a bid to oust his coalition government in the upcoming election expected later this year. The former Prime Minister's right-wing Naftali Bennett and centrist Yair Lapid issued statements on Sunday announcing the merger of their parties, Bennett 2026 and There Is a Future.
A highway bomb attack in southwestern Colombia has killed 19 people and injured at least 38, the latest spate of violence ahead of next month's presidential election. Buses and vans were left mangled in the blast Saturday on the Pan American Highway in the restive southwestern Cauca department. Iran's top diplomat, Abbas Araghchi, has left Islamabad for Moscow, the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said, as mediators hoped to keep the prospect of more Tehran-Washington talks alive. Araghchi sandwiched a visit to Amman's Muscat in between trips to the Pakistani capital and left on Sunday to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow the following day. But there was no indication that direct Iranian talks with the United States would resume.
After 15 years as Apple's CEO, Tim Cook will be stepping down from the role in September. On the latest episode of TechCrunch's Equity podcast, Kirsten Korosek, Sean O'Kane, and I discussed Apple's big announcement. We reflected on how Apple has changed since Cook took over from Steve Jobs in 2011 and what challenges incoming CEO John Turnus will be facing.
And US President Donald Trump and his officials were the likely targets of a suspected gunman who attempted to storm the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Acting US Attorney General Todd Blanche has said the suspect, named by US media as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen, was arrested after police said he opened fire near a security checkpoint during the event at a Washington, D.C. hotel on Saturday. And Israel has issued new forced evacuation notices for areas in southern Lebanon, ordering residents of 7 towns that lie beyond its so-called buffer zone to leave, ramping up the conflict with Hezbollah despite a US-brokered ceasefire. An Israeli military spokesperson said in a statement on X on Sunday that the Lebanese armed group was violating the ceasefire and that Israel would act against it, telling residents to head north and west.
US President Donald Trump reiterated on Sunday that talks with Iran would be held remotely and commended Pakistan, which has been playing a mediatory role between Washington and Tehran, saying that Islamabad would stay involved in the process. The US president's remarks came during a phone interview with Fox News, where he said, if they, Iran, want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us. You know, there is a telephone. If they want, they can talk, but we are not sending people to travel 18 hours to meet.
Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar said on Sunday that traffic restrictions around Islamabad's Red Zone and Serena Hotel, which was expected to be the venue for the now cancelled US-Iran talks, had been lifted. Traffic restrictions around the Serena Hotel and the Red Zone in Islamabad have been lifted today. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the people of Pakistan, especially the residents of Islamabad and Rawalpindi, for their patience and cooperation.
United States authorities believe a gunman who is accused of trying to storm the White House Correspondents' Association dinner was targeting US President Donald Trump and members of his administration. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said on Sunday that authorities believe the suspect travelled from California to Washington, D.C. by train via Chicago.
And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was back in Pakistan on Sunday, a diplomatic source told Dawn, a day after he left Islamabad for a visit to Amman as part of a tri-nation tour. He is undertaking the trip against the backdrop of ongoing diplomatic efforts, notably by Pakistan, to bring Tehran and Washington to the table to talks aimed at ending the conflict that began with US-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th.
Tehran, Iran, across Iran's capital, life has returned to a kind of normal. Markets, cafes and shops are opening their doors, and some highways are buzzing with traffic once again as a fragile ceasefire with the United States largely holds after weeks of devastating US-Israeli attacks.